welcome to tonight's Guardian Gaming, hosted by the mighty Keith Stewart.
There we go. Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. Hopefully I'm going to put my slides on the screen. This is going to be very kind of ad hoc, because I've not really sort of done this before, and I'm not very good at PowerPoint. So I'm going to put some slides on. I'm going to do a little quick presentation first, just to say, hello, thank you for coming, and this is who we are. So it's not like a massive PowerPoint presentation or anything like that.
Yeah, I'll just stick it in
Hang
there.
on, is my whole...
Do I need to do anything with this, or is it just...
That's, by the way, Richard Stanton, who literally just arrived.
Thank you.
Your mic is on.
Richard Stanton! So, thank you so much for coming this evening. My name is Keith Stewart. I'm the video games editor for The Guardian. I have been writing about games for The Guardian for about 15 years. Stop laughing, Jordan. Yeah, I've been here for quite a while, and things have changed a lot since I first got here. Like when I first started writing about games for The Guardian, like no one was really kind of interested within the paper. And for a while, I kind of said this before, but it was like being read in Shawshank Redemption. I'd get these kind of journalists coming up to me in the canteen and saying, we've heard you're the guy that knows about games. And then they proceed to ask me questions like, is it okay for my son to be playing Minecraft or my daughter to be playing Minecraft 10 hours a day? To which I'd always reply, yes, of course, that's absolutely fine, very normal. So I've got some stats about why we cover games. Games, I think, are seen at the newspaper now as kind of a sort of part. Can you see that? Kind of.
Who picked those colours?
I didn't. Well, it came from the advertising people, and they said use these, it'll be fine. So we're just talking about why do we cover games? And we cover games because obviously they're part of the cultural context. They're part of the political, socio-political scene. We cover them because they're part of the arts. And lots of our readers, as you have shown, because you're here this evening, are interested in games. You can't see, but 42% of our readers, apparently, according to research, play computer games. So that was a very good reason to write about them. Does that show up? Yeah, so 70% of our 16 to 34-year-old readers play games. This is kind of surprising stuff to a lot of people within the paper, but it wasn't surprising to me because I saw like our traffic going up year on year when we started writing about them online. And this is to show how popular games are. This was yesterday on The Guardian. This is the biggest stories of the day. And at number 5, you can probably just see it's our story, our very serious cultural study of games. The 5th biggest story on The Guardian yesterday was, let me get something off my chest about boob physics in video games. So that was the 5th highest charting story on The Guardian yesterday, just below President Obama. So, yes, well done, video games. So, having discussed why it is we cover games, I thought it'd be a really good idea to get a few readers in to meet some of our games writers. Basically, I'm the only video game writer in staff, but I have a wide kind of array of very talented writers that write for me. They all kind of write for separate individual magazines and news sites, as well as writing for us. And what I thought I'd get them to do is introduce themselves and say who they write for, how they got into games, and also the game that they're playing at the moment. So I thought that'd be kind of a useful introduction, so you knew who was here. So Jordan, can we start with you? Can you say who you are, how you got into writing, and what your favourite game is at the moment?
Okay, so my name's Jordan Erica Webber, 3 names because otherwise people think I'm a man. I have only been doing this for about 2.5 years, so not quite as long as Keith. I've been doing it basically since I graduated from uni. I wrote on the university newspaper, the Warwick Boar. I was games editor there, and then I just started doing freelance stuff as soon as I graduated. I write for The Guardian, The Observer, PC Gamer, Kotaku UK, a load of magazines like Games TM, X1, Mac Format, Mac Life. I also do a lot of video stuff. So I do a video YouTube channel called Family Gamer TV. So I talk about games for kids and families and stuff to play together. And at the moment, I'm playing a load of games I can't talk about. But the one that, so normally I kind of stop playing games after I'm done reviewing them, but there's one that I keep going back to, which is called Kalimba, which is an Xbox One game, so probably none of you will be able to play it because nobody owns one of those. But it's a really, it's a really, really good Xbox One puzzle platformer where you play as like two totems, and you control them at the same time. And they're different colours, and they can only go through the bits that are the same colour as them. So you have to like swap them and like stack them on top of each other and stuff, and use the level to move them around, because as soon as you move right, they both move right. So it's quite clever and really, really funny. The totems have faces, and they make noises when they get scared and stuff, so it's pretty cool. That's me, I
thank you
think.
very much. Andy, who are you?
Hello, I'm Andy Kelly. I write for PC Gamer. This is my 11th year as a games writer, as you can tell by the sort of sadness in my voice. Not really. I was obsessed with PC Zone magazine in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and Charlie Brooker was my favorite writer, and I used to go to his reviews first. And I used to sit down and write out his reviews into a Word document to get a feel for how he did it, which sounds insane, but...
Is that like method stalking?
Yeah, yeah. I just thought, what would he be thinking when he wrote these words down? That sounds mental, now that I've said it out loud. But, and then I just started sort of sending sample reviews to like a bunch of magazines I read. Like, I just constantly sent them. Like in Shawshank Redemption, when he won't stop sending letters to the library department for more books, I kept sending reviews to people. And finally, PSM2 magazine, which is now dead, RIP, was doing a kind of shout out for readers who like writing to send in samples, and I'd been doing it anyway, so I sent them some samples, and I got through the sort of process and got an interview in Bath, and they gave me a job, and I was 18, and I just left school, and I went to Bath, and I've been there ever since. So that's basically it. And
What are you playing, Andy, at the moment?
I'm playing Resident Evil HD Remaster, because I was reviewing it for PC Gamer. It's kind of really hard and grueling and unpleasant and annoying, but it's also brilliant. It's a really old game, and it's based on an even older game, but it feels weirdly like relevant now because of the sort of rise of really hardcore survival games and stuff. It sort of sits alongside the likes of DayZ and that nicely, and then it hates you and it wants you to die. And I kind of like that about it.
Okay, it says a lot. It says a lot about you, Andy. Which one? Maybe we'll find out more later. Philippa.
Hello. I'm Philippa Warr, and I am one of the writers at Rock Paper Shotgun. I also do some freelance for Shut Up and Sit Down, which is a board gaming website. And before I was full-time at RPS, I've also freelanced for PC Gamer and the BBC and Wired and all kinds of places like that. I got into games journalism maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Before that, I did celebrity and fashion writing.
Natural career trajectory,
Obviously,
isn't it?
shut up. So yeah, I'd been doing that for a while for Digital Spy and then for several of AOL's properties. But then I left to go freelance, so I started writing for Wired, doing sort of more sort of tech and just curious and interesting future-y things, and ended up specialising more and more in games, doing more sort of freelance around that area, and then properly just gave up the rest and specialised. So yeah, although I do still sort of find myself looking at Oscar fashion and stuff like that, so it's fine. They're completely compatible. What were the other things?
What games are you playing?
Oh yeah. I'm playing a couple of MOBAs at the moment, so Dota 2, obviously, for anyone who follows me on Twitter, I think that's just a constant. Also Smite, which is sort of similar, but over-the-shoulder kind of perspective. And Viscera Cleanup Detail, which is all about cleaning up after a horrible sort of space accident, and you just have to like incinerate alien limbs and mop up blood, and it's really satisfying. There's a kind of like well, that was a job well done when you've got a nicely scrubbed space station.
Do you get to like look at your bin full of, because it's like, it's basically, it's kind of the idea is, isn't it, that it's like there's been a Doom style game and then you're coming in afterwards and cleaning up. Do you get like is there like a bin full of limbs?
So there's like these bins that you can put limbs and things into for easy transportation to the furnace.
Sensible.
But there's also like a bucket and water dispenser, so you can sort of, do your mopping really efficiently, and those go in the furnace as well. I don't know why the furnace doesn't get like dampened by all of that, but anyway. And you have to put like nitrogen canisters in the nitrogen storage area. I think you probably think I've gone a bit weird, but it's really, really satisfying.
There's a theory that games are about cleaning up, though, isn't there? Like all the games, the puzzle games where you have to clear the screen, and shooters where you kill all the enemies.
It's not annoying in the way that it just puts like objective markers all over your screen. You make your own objective markers, which is excellent.
Okay.
Simon, please go
go
now.
I've got to sit there. I'm just moving. Jordan sat in the wrong place. So we had this all choreographed to work perfectly. There we go. So you can do yours at the end again. Okay, Simon, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Simon Parkin. I spend about half my time writing for Specialist Press, so Eurogamer and Edge and places like that, and half the time writing for people like Keith. I write for the NewYorker.com in America, and I'm just working on my first piece for Harper's. So, the first thing that I got published in a magazine was in Mean Machines when I was about 8, and it was a tip guide for Maniac Mansion on NES. I didn't own an NES, and I'd never played Maniac Mansion, but I bought a tips book in Waterstones, and I copied out some tips really well.
Your first brush with journalistic ethics.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. So corrupt from the start. So yeah, I did that, and then when I was studying at university, I was really into collecting video games, and I had an idea for a magazine. I thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was a video game equivalent to a record collector, like a video game collector that kind of listed all the rare video games and how much they were worth. And so I wrote to Future Publishing, who publish a lot of the computer games magazines in the UK, and said, I don't know what I'm doing, but I've got a cool idea for a magazine. And the guy wrote back to me and said, come down to Bath and tell us about your idea. So I did that, and I told him my idea, and he said, I don't think that'll make a magazine. He told me how much it costs to launch a magazine, firstly. Yeah. And then was like, but why don't you write a series of articles about collectible video games for Edge magazine? And so I did that. That was in 2003, so I've been doing it for 12 years now. So that's my story.
Okay, and we have another Edge alumni next to you,
that, yeah,
Rich Stanton.
Well, you didn't find out what Simon was playing, which might be very
Oh no,
important.
that's true. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Rich.
You're not getting away with that one.
Yeah, Simon, what are you playing?
Well, at the moment, I'm playing Destiny, which is a video game, and
That's the sort of insight everyone was expecting this evening.
and I kind of hate myself while I'm doing it. It does all the things I don't really like about video games, but I can't stop.
Everybody hate. Like, does anyone here play Destiny? Yeah. Do you like everybody I know that plays Destiny hates themselves while they're playing Destiny, but they just can't.
It's like an abusive. It's like an abusive partner. It's like do all this stuff, and maybe I'll give you a treat.
Yeah. But then maybe the treat won't work with your character.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I know everybody's in an abusive relationship with Destiny.
Yeah.
Rich.
Hello, I'm Rich Stanton. I don't really have a very interesting story. There seems to be, or my perception is there's a kind of mystique about how to get into games journalism, and I just applied for a job. I saw a job at Future for Edge magazine. I'd always liked Edge, so I just applied for it, and I got it. Moved to Bath, stayed at Edge for about 3.5 years, became features editor. Then I left Edge. I've been freelance ever since. I write for loads of places, really, anyone that'll have me. You know, I'm pretty cheap.
Who are you writing? Tell us who you're writing for before, because it was very unlike. Because you were on a poetry magazine, weren't you? Is that right?
Poetry magazine? No, I worked for the Wordsworth Trust.
That's right.
An organisation dedicated to the memory of the great Romantic poet William Wordsworth. I was basically, my life plan was to be a Romantic scholar, and then. When that all fucked up, I kind of, fell back on Resi 4. I ran a contemporary arts program before that. But basically, I had this slightly odd thing, really, where I ticked off all the contemporary poets I wanted to meet. And after 3 years of doing a poetry program with about 40 dates, I'd met them all. So I just kind of thought, yeah, what's next, you know? Shinji Mikami. What were the other questions? What am I playing
What
at the
are you
minute?
playing at the moment?
What am I playing at the minute? I'm playing a bit of HOTS, Heroes of the Storm, which is Blizzard's new kind of, you know, we're going to make a MOBA, but it's going to be for people who don't really like MOBAs, which is me. I've tried to play Dota, I've tried to play LoL, and, you know, Pip is thinking LoL casual, but I never really got on with them. But I do get on with HOTS. I really love HOTS. I think Blizzard, you know, have a real knack for taking a kind of a genre or an idea and just, you know, getting its essence and producing something quite brilliant. And I think HOTS is brilliant. Lots of people who play MOBAs don't think that, but I do. I was playing a lot of the Halo 5 beta, but that stopped. I've been trying to play a lot of the Master Chief Collection, but that game is a disaster. And Counter-Strike, I play Counter-Strike all the time, so that's just a regular for me. And Smash Brothers, that's about it. I play quite a lot of games, you know, so different day,
right
different
job,
answer.
Ben.
Yeah, you know.
Well
Well, the ironic thing is, I thought it would be a DOS. You know, when I applied for the job, I thought, oh, this will be easy. You know, I play games anyway, and then, you know, 8 years later, down the acid mines. No thanks.
I think I've probably, I guess I've been here the longest, haven't I? Because I started in September this year. I've been writing about video games professionally for 20 years. I started on Edge magazine in September 1995. I was working for a development studio called Big Red Software, and I used to work for them in my holidays at university. I was doing English and drama, and at Warwick University, but a long time before children. I earned money in the holidays writing about. I wrote instruction manuals, and I did a little bit of QA testing. I was one of the QA testers on Micro Machines 2. I did a little bit of level design, and then I kind of got bored of that, and I really love writing, and I applied to Edge magazine, which at the time the editor was Jason Brooks, who was quite an interesting character. And I can remember going to interview with him. He said, I got into the interview room, and he said, "Can you just write a review, and I'll see you in a bit?" And then he walked out, and 2.5 hours later, he returned and read the review and said, "Oh, would you like a job?" So that was good. So I worked for Edge magazine for 2 years. I went freelance for a very, very long time. I launched helped launch Dreamcast magazine, which was wonderful. One of the best times I ever had in games journalism. And then the PlayStation 2 came out, and Dreamcast died. And so I was trying not to get emotional. And then I started working for The Guardian. And the way I got into The Guardian was mobile games had just come out, except they weren't really games at the time. They were kind of SMS-based games. So you could, on your mobile, you could sign up for one of these games. And it's like a choose-your-own-adventure thing through text messages. And this was the extent of mobile gaming. And no one in their right minds was not playing these games, let alone writing about them. So I emailed the then head of the online section of The Guardian, Jack Schofield, and said, "Can I write about mobile games for you?" And he said, "What the hell are mobile games?" And it's just one of those things like being at the right point at the right time with the right story. I explained, and he said, "Yeah, we'll take like 100 words." And that was like £15. And then they couldn't get rid of me, and I built my role. And then in 2004, we launched the Guardian Games blog, which is like The Guardian was obsessed with blogging in 2004. They had blogs for everything. So they launched the Games blog with me and Greg Howson and Alex Kratowski from TV's famous Bits and Thumb Bandits magazine shows. So I was immediately starstruck when I met her. And we got together, we did this blog, and it was wonderful, and I just stayed on, and they couldn't get rid of me, and I became Games Editor, and here I am. So there we go. So that's everybody done. We'll get on with things. So I think the idea is, what we thought we'd do is go through some of the news stories that are happening right now in video games, and each of us has got like a game we'd like to talk about, and I thought that's a good way of bringing in some themes. And then after that, when we've gone through that, we'll open it up for Q&A. It'd be great to get questions from you from them. So this will be in like half an hour. So if you think of some questions, that would be good. And there are rewards as well for asking questions. So it's worth thinking about it, because Jordan is a fantastic baker and cook, and she's baked some biscuits. So anyone who asks a question tonight will get a biscuit
Until
from
they run
Jordan.
out.
Yeah, until they run yeah, obviously.
There are like 8.
Yeah, okay. And also I've got basically Activision. I asked them ages ago for some sort of giveaways for an event I did last summer called Radius Festival. And typically for a video game publisher, they turned up 4 months late. So I have this stuff to give away as well. So anyone that asks a question tonight will get a biscuit and a delightful Destiny notepad and a delightful Destiny t-shirt. So that you can, if you're in an abusive relationship with Destiny, you can now write a novel about it in this book. So yeah, anyone that asks questions will get all those goodies just to prompt you. So start thinking about some of the things you may want to ask. So I thought it would be a good idea for us just to go through some of the things that have come up recently in video games and see where it leads us. So, oh, that's gone to the wrong place. Get off. That's a joke for later on. Right, okay, so there's my desktop.
Oh my God, you porn.
Something called the
So,
Thrustmaster in his
here we go. Let's watch this video, which is a news story which is relevant right now. Oh, it's right here.
Think about
Oh, shut up. Okay, hang on.
when you think about how you experience technology today, it's like behind this glass screen, and you're kind of stuck. It feels cold. We've unlocked the screen.
So this is Microsoft.
Really what we're trying to do is break down the walls between technology and people.
Yesterday, Microsoft had a big
This is the next generation of
Windows
computing.
10
This is the next
event,
PC.
and they announced their
It's basically
augmented
a
reality
see-through
platform,
display that you wear,
HoloLens.
and it lets you see
This is
holograms in your world, in your space, all around you.
A hologram is made out of light, which ultimately allowed us to
Thanks,
pour
Microsoft.
digital assets over the real world so that humans can essentially be entertained and be empowered to do things in brand new ways.
The ability to draw with your hand or to take an asset, an image and move it or scale it is a very natural way of interacting with it.
Here's what you can do with holographic video. Here's what you can do with using your world as a game level. Here's what you can do with taking the power of 3D modeling and creation, and guess what? Pulling it out of a screen into real 3D, and then sharing what you've created with others.
That was science fiction, and now we're bringing it into science fact.
They've been working on this for,
I think that's enough.
you know,
I think that's
years.
enough, Microsoft. I think that
I
is
think you
enough.
must grow those people in test tubes, you know.
So,
Americans.
I'll just come around here. So, so this was the announcement yesterday from Microsoft that Windows 10 is coming out, and partly one of the interesting things was they're going to allow cross-platform gaming between Xbox One and PC gamers. But the major thing I think was Is it HoloLens? HoloLens?
Yeah, HoloLens.
Yeah, okay.
HoloLens.
Which is an augmented reality platform.
As in Hollow Promise.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just saying.
Thank you. Bye. So I was just going to ask you all, what do you think about augmented reality and virtual reality? Is that going to be the future of video games?
No.
Oh, thanks. Okay, next question.
I think the version that they're selling now, it's in like augmented reality glasses, is like, sometimes you'll see a scan from like a science magazine from the 50s, and you go, look at those idiots. They thought we were going to have, flying microwaves or whatever. Now, we're going to look back at this HoloLens advert in 10 years and go, those idiots.
Well, we're in our virtual reality, like with full virtual reality suits rather than augmented reality.
Or maybe just nothing. Maybe we'll just be like this now. But I think that kind of thing is like they make it because they can, not because the world needs it. The world doesn't need sort of holograms projected around you. I mean, it'd just be distracting if you're, walking to work or something.
But I don't think you have to wear it. Like, you don't have to wear it all the time.
The person that made that advert, though, and the people that are involved in the creation of it, they're imagining a future where everyone's wearing those things and projecting things around them, and that's the standard. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay. Anyone excited by augmented reality? Okay. Because you look excited.
This is my face, Keith. Anyway, no. Well, the thing with this is that, like, obviously, like, or not obviously necessarily, but AR glasses have sort of been floating around for a while now because, like, Jerry Ellsworth's been working on her Cast AR stuff for like 2 years now, I think it was that was announced. So obviously there's sort of a few people working in that space. But from what I know about the HoloLens stuff, I think it's possibly going to be like Kinect in that the most interesting applications of it and the most interesting things that people do with it will probably be outside the game space. So like Kinect is being used in a whole bunch of different ways. Like I think it's being used in sort of sexual assault response training, and it's being used in sort of disaster relief sort of projects and stuff like that, which is obviously sort of outside the scope of gaming, but it's still very much a sort of an interesting and valuable way of employing that technology. So I think that it has a lot of scope to be used as a tool. Just I'm not necessarily sure that it's in gaming, although this could be, for example, where procedural generation is really interesting, because obviously if you're projecting something into a space, then obviously everyone's living room layout or whatever is going to be different. So you want to be able to take inputs and sort of, you know, apply algorithms and generate interesting outputs without it absolutely fucking everything. So yeah. I think that its effects and the way that, and the things people learn when they're trying to use it and get it to work will be super interesting, but I'm not necessarily sure that it as itself and it as a gaming thing is going to be exciting.
I think it depends on, it depends on software implementation, doesn't it? Like the interesting thing about augmented reality is that it needs to know what's in your environment, I think. So there's lots of smart people working on it, but if you put an augmented reality headset on, the software needs to know what the objects are in your house. It needs to know, like for example, yesterday evening, Microsoft showed like a Minecraft demo where you put the augmented reality headset on and you looked around and the demo knew what was a table in your room and what was a window and what were walls, and it would turn those into Minecraft representations of those things. So you had a Minecraft table and you had Minecraft walls. So I think for augmented reality to work as a gaming platform, it's got to understand your environment. And I think there's a lot of potential there for like survival horror games. I spoke to I was speaking to Shinji. I met Shinji Mikami. I'm sure you have as well, Rich. But I met him who's the creator of Resident Evil, by the way. And we talked a little bit about this. And you know, the idea of an augmented reality game where you're in your house and it knows, if you look up, it knows where a window is in your house, say, and then suddenly a zombie smashes in through there, or a zombie dog. You know, that could be like terrifying and really effective. But implementation is the key, and also understanding the rules. Like one of the things with Oculus Rift and Project Morpheus, which are Oculus Rift is the kind of Kickstarter-based virtual reality headset, which hopefully is coming out later this year or next year. Project Morpheus is Sony's PlayStation virtual reality headset. The big thing with those is the developers are finding they're having to create a whole new language of interaction, because lots of the things that we take for granted in games you cannot do in virtual reality. Like you cannot have a camera that moves independently of someone's own movements. Every movement within a virtual reality world has to be from the gamer. You can't have any camera movement at all because that creates nausea. So there's loads of like the conventions and the language of virtual reality and augmented reality are things that people are going to have to discover to make it work.
Have been like looking at stuff in that space in general though, because I think one of their R&D projects that they were talking about maybe mid last year was about that sort of the way of projecting a game into your living room, sort of in that AR way. But the other thing is, I think one of the things that they mentioned yesterday that isn't games related but is super interesting is that they've been working with NASA's JPL, which is the Jet Propulsion Lab, about sort of being able to use the interface to direct the rover to, you know, do things and conduct research, and I think that's super interesting.
So a scientist will wear a headset and they're kind
I think they can just like point at stuff and go, you know, go over there, do this thing.
Go
you know.
sit,
I
stay.
mean, yeah, it depends on like the exact like way that they set up the interface, but that stuff's super interesting to me. Obviously, it's not about games, and I should probably shut up about things that aren't games, but super interesting.
That is what's interesting, and I think if we learn anything from the Wii, the original Wii, It's that this stuff is great as a gimmick, and you'll get your grandma around and go, hey, look at this. And but then, like, you know, we're just, the path of least resistance for human beings is sitting in a chair, like moving my thumbs. Like, even, because you get the AR cards, right, with your 3DS and with your Vita, and it's super cute. Like, you know, you put the card down there and you get to shoot the thing, you have to move a bit. And even, like, by the time I have to do that, I'm already resentful. I'm like, well,
I've had to move,
I don't want
I've
to
had
have to
to
move
lean
my
forward.
body. Yeah, so, you know, I think this stuff is gimmick, I think, basically, and it won't get past that, because I think there's a fundamental overestimation of how interesting it is to play a game in the room that you're in these surroundings. Like, I would rather play a game where, like, some artists have spent a bit of time crafting it and making it look beautiful. Like, it's great for 10 seconds, and then you're like, okay, I'm done now.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, they always demo them in, like, big, massive, like, lounges that no real human has, and they're talking about, like, making a level out of your surroundings. Like, if they made a level out of my tiny flat, it would be shit. So you've got these massive, like, Silicon Valley giant lounges that you only see in American films, and, like, it's probably really cool that, but, like, the practical application for most people who live in small places is pretty limited.
Yeah, it was like the problem with Kinect, wasn't it? Like, with Kinect, you needed 6 foot in front of your television and 6 foot all around you. So that immediately knocks out about 80% of your core demographic, who are young men who have got probably often, especially with Xbox in the US, it's often young men and women who don't have an enormous amount of space. And in Japan, like, especially in, like, the big cities, no one's got any space. So, like, Kinect was never going to take off in Japan because there was not enough space. I've actually got some images of talking about virtual augmented reality. Has anyone heard of Magic Leap, which is the augmented? This is the augmented reality technology. It's been bought by Google for many, many millions of pounds. I've got some things very quickly to show you. Magic Leap is, it hasn't been kind of properly announced yet, but everyone thinks that this is what the replacement for Google Glass is going to be. Like, Google Glass was kind of retired a couple of days ago, and this company looks like it might well be what Google sort of go with in the end. I've just got, let's have a look at this, see if I can find it. This is my desktop again. No, that's not it. Where's my... here we go. So, hang on, let's play. Here we go. Right, so they made the company, I don't know if anyone's seen this, but the company behind the Magic, what's it called? What's it called again?
Leap.
Yes, Magic Leap. They put in a patent application for their technology, and they provided some illustrations for how their augmented reality might be used. And these are fascinating and hilarious. So this is what they gave to the patent application office to say, this is how you might use augmented reality in the future. And they had lots of pictures of people using it in the supermarket. And I really loved them, because, like, the first few were just really, really normal things, like, oh, you could put your shopping list and use that. You have an augmented reality shopping list, because who likes writing those things down? You could have, you can maybe buy things on it. And that all seems, that was kind of sweet. That's really nice. I can understand that. But here's something else you could do with augmented reality in a supermarket. Have a monster smashing out. Terrifying your children. So yeah, this is put forward in their patent application for this technology. Terrifying monster leaping out of the breakfast cereals. But that's not even the best bit. Imagine you're in hospital and a doctor comes in. You're worried, you don't know what's wrong with you, you've got terrible, maybe heart palpitations or stomach ache or something. Doctor comes in and says, instead of telling you what's wrong with you, don't worry, I can show you. And so this was another image from the patent application behind this technology. Here's a doctor. Actually, what I think he's done here, he's taken a 3D internal scan of this woman, and he's showing her what's wrong with this possibly diseased bodily organ. And everyone's, like, wearing their glasses, thinking, wow, this is fascinating. Thanks so much, Doc. And he's saying, that's fine. This is why you're only going to live 3 more months.
You're not even allowed to have mobile phones turned on in hospitals.
Sorry?
You're not even allowed to have mobile phones turned on in hospitals.
But you can have AR headsets. That's fine. So, yeah, I just thought this was really interesting. The fact that the AR future that's being envisaged by these companies for us is kind of terrifying. And games are the least kind of terrifying element of it. So, So Rich, you're the only person I think who hasn't voiced an opinion on virtual reality.
Well, I just think like even that image is like slightly a euphemism because they're not going to use it for something like if you're in the supermarket and a devil burst out, that's a bit of a laugh, right? So they're not going to use it for that. They're going to use it for like the honey monster to come out and like sell your kids some cereal. And I hate the kind of commodification of everything that just like seems to be the inevitable way the world is moving, and like those patents just depress me, you know, because I think that's what it'll be used for. We'll just, you know, constantly be plastered with adverts and stupid mascots coming out at us trying to get us to buy chocolate bars. I don't think they'll actually do anything that's a laugh with it. Sorry to be so down, you know. And in terms of, you know, HoloLens, which I guess is how we started on this, I guess I would say my cynicism mainly comes because I was, for my sins, I was a big Kinect advocate. And at the time when Microsoft were, in the run-up to Kinect, Microsoft were so protective of that. You know, they would, like, to kind of get in and see it and play with it, you know, you really had to kind of sign away your firstborn. Which I did. And I was sold, you know, and it was much more the concept than the actuality of the thing itself. I just thought, well, the software will get better. And of course it never did. You know, it was like the best thing on Kinect was probably Just Dance, and even Just Dance was a bit of a gimmick. So I felt burned by Kinect, or, you know, just really disappointed, like let down. You know, it was almost like somebody cheating on you, you know, it was like they could have been so much better. And when I look at HoloLens, I instantly think of, I realize it's not a straight comparison, I think of something like Milo. Because Milo really was the reason that I was so in love with the idea of Kinect.
Did everyone know what Milo is, by the way? Milo was a Kinect demo created by Peter Molyneux.
Yeah, it was
who usually delivers on every promise that he's ever given.
It's interesting though, because Molyneux for his whole career has wanted to make, not that game particularly, but a variant on that game. He's always wanted to make a game about the experience of growing up, about boyhood. And you can see how, you know, Kinect, if it had worked in the way they said it did, which obviously it doesn't, would have been a perfect fit for that. And you know, as it turns out, that I didn't play Milo myself. But I've had friends who went to Lionhead and played it, and they said, well, it did kind of work, like the way they showed it, but not really. You know, it wasn't nearly as impressive as they implied.
Yeah.
Anyway, Milo's...
That should kind of be Molyneux's kind of business card, shouldn't it?
It kind of works.
It kind of works.
Yeah, so anyway, just to get back to what I was saying, it's the HoloLens, I just have this cynicism about Microsoft's ability to deliver what they promise with tech like that.
So talking as writers then, like virtual reality and augmented reality is something that was being pushed at us all the time as kind of exciting, interesting things that we should be writing about. How do you as writers kind of process what the industry is telling you is the next big thing? Is that difficult not to get kind of swept up on it and think and just kind of report on that, or, you know, is it very important, do you think, to take that kind of cynical step back?
I'm not very trendy, so I don't really know.
Well, we got sent an Oculus Rift at PC Gamer, and it was just lying like there was a jumper on it, on a chair for about like a week or something, and I thought I'm gonna have a go on that, and I stuck up my head.
The jumper or the Oculus
Rift? I put the jumper on.
And what a nice weave.
Yeah, it was like I was really impressed by it. This was the very early first debug kit, which was by now, you know, by today's standards, is pretty unimpressive. But I suddenly became like, I said to everyone in the office, like, why is no one using this? And I started a column on PC Gamer, the Rift report, writing about Rift stuff. And yeah, I used it just because it was there in the office and not because I was caught up in the buzz of it or anything. And now I'm a little bit of a Oculus Rift evangelist. I'm not convinced by Microsoft's Holo thing, but Oculus Rift, the new version, is actually really good. And yeah, I just picked up because I thought it was interesting, and PC Gamer is pretty immune to being swept up and stuff, and no one cared about it.
Isn't it? Yeah, yeah. Has anyone here tried virtual reality? Has anyone tried Oculus Rift? Oh, quite a few. So yeah, I mean, I had to go on Alien, but I just spent the whole time in a cupboard. I didn't want to come out. Yeah, and it was amazing as well because I don't know if anyone's played Alien Isolation, but when you can hide from the alien in a cupboard, and then there's like a sequence of controllers to input your panic. So you can lean back in the cupboard, and you can also hold your breath. And it's just incredible. I love the fact that this is a game where panic is built into the game mechanics. But in Oculus Rift,
press
it's
Y
just
to panic.
Yeah. Yeah. Press X to grieve. What was that? Was
Pay
it Call of
respects.
Duty?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
that's it. Press X to pay respects. That's where video game narrative is now. What I thought we'd do is to move to sort of go through games in a rather than go through a set of criteria. I asked each of the writers here to name a game that they're kind of interested in that's coming up in the future, and we can kind of build our discussion around that. So very quickly, I'm going to show you a series of game demos. I'll show you one at a time, and then we'll talk about the game that comes up. And these are all games that are coming out this year that we're kind of interested in, we think that you might be interested in, and each of us is going to try and explain why, and this will we'll branch off from there into more discussion, and hopefully we'll get rid of this nightmarish portrayal of the future of medicine. So actually, we're going to start off with a game that kind of a lot of us are interested in, and I don't know. I think this is a game which kind of lots of interesting stuff around video game design kind of finds itself in this game. I think it's very interesting. It's very telling about where games are going. So let me see if I can make it full screen. Yes. Does anyone know what it is yet? So this is No Man's Sky. Who's heard of No Man's Sky? Everybody, almost everybody. So this is a game by a small company in Guildford called Hello Games, and it's a kind of procedurally generated, persistent universe space exploration game. Incredibly made by, I think, 9 people, although it started off with 4 people. It has a complete procedurally generated universe that you can explore at your will and at your leisure. You can fly to a planet, get out, explore. I think there's hundreds, if not hundreds of millions of planets to go to. Each one has its own procedurally generated ecosystem. And there are AI spaceships, there are trade routes, and apparently there's something dark and exciting and interesting at the center of the universe. But Hello Games have been kind of very guarded about what you actually do in the game. And if there's a point to the game, is it just about you in a lonely universe exploring alone? They've also tried to apply kind of real eco logic to it. So only 1 out of every 10 planets that you go to will have life, and only 1 out of 10 of those planets will have complex life, and only 1 out of 10 of those planets will have complex life that we would kind of recognize, so like mammals or intelligent beings. So there's this kind of real sense of a very vast, lonely universe, and it's going to be very unlikely, even though it's multiplayer, that you will ever encounter another character, another player. So to me, this is kind of interesting because it's got lots of things about it which suggest where games are going. A persistent multiplayer universe, I think that's where a lot of games are going. But also this sense of the player as the storyteller. So I think we're kind of maybe a lot of games are moving out of the era where you're playing one character who has one story that you're kind of just a passenger to. I think we're moving into a new era maybe where we're the authors and we get to decide what the story is, and the game is the backdrop to that. So No Man's Sky, everybody, what do you think?
I think it is the most interesting video game in development at the moment that we know about. And for those reasons that you said, but also because I think systemically the way, what they're demonstrating as a small independent studio is something that hasn't been done before. They have a blockbuster ambition, and I think part of Sean Murray, who runs the company, or the co-founder, one of the things he wants to show is that a team of 12 people can make a game on a blockbuster scale. It just has to be have all these procedural ways of working, and I think if they come through on that promise, which it appears like they're going to, then it could have a really significant shift on the industry. And it's standing on the shoulders of things like Minecraft, obviously, but there's something else here as well. That's my take.
Yeah. I guess, for me, I think one thing that Hello Games are worried about, and I met Sean Murray at Gamescom, big video game conference last August, and I think there's a real worry in the company that people are going to be expecting this vast kind of narrative experience, because there's 2 other big space games that are coming out. It's Elite Dangerous, which is already out now, and Star Citizen by Chris Roberts, who made all the Wing Commander games. Star Citizen is a massive, epic, narrative, persistent world space game, which is coming out later this year. And I think there's a worry at No Man's Sky that people are going to be expecting that sort of thing, and they're really worried about the hype around the game, and they're worried that this is actually, for all intents and purposes, this is kind of like an indie game. It's an experiential game. It's about your experience within a universe.
Is that backtracking, though? Because they've generated that, right?
I know that. Exactly. But it's Sean Murray is like one of the most honest people I've ever interviewed, and like he did a talk at Gamescom in front of a room full of journalists, and it was essentially just kind of like a mea culpa. It was him having some kind of breakdown. He was like pacing up and down on the stage, going, "You're going to be so disappointed by what we're going to show you, and I'm so sorry." But I think you're right, and I think they are worried about it because this was a game which was first shown off at the VGA Awards in the United States, which was like a massive deal, millions of viewers. Sony put a trailer out, and it just ignited, and people were so fascinated by it.
I remember Twitter in the aftermath of that trailer. It was just like, want, need.
Take my money.
Exactly.
It's mainly because it was something that had some colours in it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of
sci-fi. Dinosaur as well.
Yeah,
it had
colours
a dinosaur.
and a dinosaur.
I was just like, yep.
And a lot of sci-fi games go for the kind of hard sci-fi grey on black thing, but this is inspired by many kind of sci-fi artists like Chris Voss, who's like this amazing concept artist who does these really vividly colourful things. So I think even that excites me, that someone's looked at the sci-fi thing and decided not to do like the kind of grey ships on a black background thing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and
there's a Journey-esqueness to it.
Yeah, well, Sean Murray mentioned Journey. I don't know if everyone's played Journey, but like one of the great things about it is, it looks beautiful. It's like it's a very kind of minimalistic exploration game. Which has anonymous multiplayer elements, so you may well meet someone else within the world, and you don't know who they are, and you can't communicate, but somehow you can get together and have an experience. And Sean Murray said this is what he was thinking of. This was what was in his mind with No Man's Sky, because he wanted it to be, if you're in this world and you feel alone, what would it be like if you met someone else? He didn't want it to be like, there's 15 people around you. He wanted it to be like, after 30 hours of play, you might see one other person, and what is that like? And that's fascinating.
I'm interested in the size of it because, like, they've said it's going to be absolutely huge, this procedurally generated universe. Like, none of the developers have seen all of it. In fact, each of the people in the studio has a different universe on their computer, so that to test that the procedural generation works, they've all got a different, like, seed or whatever. And I'm interested in this whole idea that there's something at the center. That's, like, the only goal in the game, that all the players are going to start around the edge and they're all going to head for the middle. And I feel like this is the kind of game Peter Molyneux wishes he'd come up with, because it's basically like Curiosity. Like, all these players are going to be aiming for the same goal at the middle, and I'm curious as to how quickly that's going to happen.
That really worries me, though, because I don't want it like.
No, I know, but it's fascinating.
Does everyone remember Curiosity? The Peter Molyneux
I
experiment.
remember it very well.
Yeah, where he said, chip away. Everyone has got to chip away at this object on your mobile phones, and at the end of it, there'll be a prize that changes your life.
It's the same thing with Elite. The people who made that have announced like there's a
Oh, Elite
prize, isn't
Dangerous,
there, for the people who get to the middle first, or the people who reach Elite first.
It's
or
like a
something.
cash prize though, whereas
It's- yeah.
Molyneux's prize was like, you were my
And this, I
rubbish
mean,
strategy game.
Yeah.
this doesn't have a prize aside from like you'll be the first person to do it, like the first person to see it. And they've made similar promises to Molyneux, although not on the same scale. Like you will think this is amazing. The thing.
Has
that's in
anyone
the middle.
heard from that guy? Because I don't know if you're aware, but
Molyneux.
a guy no, not Molyneux. That's interesting actually. Peter Molyneux was at the there was a PG Connects event in London a couple of weeks ago, a mobile gaming event, and Peter Molyneux was on stage there. He's great. He's got. I love Peter Molyneux. He's got no kind of he kind of has got self-awareness, but it doesn't stop him. And I don't know if you've seen like there's a Peter Molyneux satire account on Twitter. I think it's Peter Molyneux, and basically all it does is tweet these ridiculous, overinflated game ideas. So Peter Molyneux's on stage at PG Connects, and the interviewer asked him about his next project, and like he says, "Oh, it's the most ambitious thing I've ever done. Imagine a video game story, but imagine it if it was written by 1,000 people or 10,000 people." And it was like, are you actually writing Peter Molyneux on the? Is that actually you on Twitter? Because this could just be taken down and put on that satire site, on that parody site, and it was incredible. And he still speaks like that. He will still say ridiculous things like that could easily be satired, but. I can't remember what got me onto that.
You were talking about what happened to the guy who got to be god and goddess.
So what happened to him? What
Wasn't
happened?
he supposed to like hand on the god crown like after a certain amount of time?
Didn't he get the chance to design something in the game?
Ooh.
Is anybody playing Goddess?
I played Goddess and I'll never touch it again. It's a disaster, that game. And I think one of the interesting things about Molyneux is that I used to have your perspective, Keith. I used to think he was... I always believed that he believed. But I think he's actually crossed the Rubicon now, and I think Goddess is actually a pretty fraudulent product. What he promised on Kickstarter, what's been delivered so far, it's not just that it's a bad game, but they haven't delivered on some of the Kickstarter promises. And yeah, obviously this prize of having the, I can't remember the dude's name who won Curiosity now, but he was supposed to go in and he was supposed to be the god of the world and influencing how people play, and it just hasn't happened, and nobody's picked him up on it, nobody's actually pointing out this was a lie. That is the dictionary definition of a lie. And yeah, I always let Molyneux off in the past. I always thought, well, he means well.
He's so cute though, really.
Well, you kind of want to believe. I've only met Molyneux once, and he really did a number on me. He really, I really did come away thinking, wow. The game at the time was Fable 2. I came away thinking, wow. The rest of the industry's fucked. Lionhead forever. And I wrote an article saying Fable 2 was going to be the best game ever, and luckily it was actually quite good. But he does have this kind of personal magnetism. There's no point in denying that. He makes you kind of want to agree with him. But I just think with 22 Cans, he has bitten off more than he can chew, and I see himself tangling himself up. I think he's done that with Goddess. I think the fact he's talking about their next project when Goddess isn't finished, that is a very bad precedent to set, and it certainly suggests that Goddess isn't where their sights are. So I don't know. Like I've really I sound like I've taken the cynical pills tonight, which I have. It's just an average day for me, but I've lost a lot of love for Molyneux in the last 6 months.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think actually my first ever developer visit was Bullfrog. Peter Molyneux took me to TGI Fridays.
Corruption!
I know. He took me to TGI Fridays and he told me about 3 games and I wrote about them and none of them came out. So...
Did he promise you a massive slap-up meal and you just got like an appetizer?
yeah, even that didn't work. We have to get through these quickly because we're running out of time. So, this is the game that Jordan chose to show you. So.
Oh, cool.
So what is this, Jordan?
So this game is called Mushroom 11, and it's a kind of physics-based platformer puzzle game. You play as like this kind of fungus thing, and it's set in a post-apocalyptic world. You can tell because there are all these kind of dystopian signs and stuff in the background. My friend, who is in the audience, actually called it the most unnecessarily beautiful game that he saw at EGX, and it is way prettier than it needs to be for what it is, but that kind of adds to its charm. But what you do is you erase bits of this fungus and then it grows back on the opposite end of where you've erased it. And it looks like it's fluid, but it's not. It's completely solid. If you stop clicking, it will just stop, or it will move. It will react to gravity and things as if it was a solid object in the shape that it's in. And yeah, it's really, really clever, and it feels amazing to play. It's got that kind of indescribable kind of, like when you sit down and you're like, yeah, this feels exactly right. Like my movement is one-to-one with what I'm doing in this game. Yeah, and it's beautiful, and I love it.
And it's like that game feel is kind of like one of the hardest things to
I know.
write about, isn't it? It's like, I like the way you called it indescribable as a writer. But yeah, I think the great thing about this game is it is about the feel of it, isn't it? It's about and like having to try and explain that to people is like one of the hardest things.
It's so weird because I've been playing it on PC, but it's obviously exactly perfect for tablet because you'd just be there like brushing away the bits at the edge of the fungus, and it'd be growing back in the other direction and moving. You could almost feel it moving away from you, you know.
What's it out on? When's it coming out?
This year. It's by an indie team called Untame Games, which is a husband and wife team. He does the kind of design and she does the art, I think, and I think they've got another artist on board as well. And I think it's coming out this year. They sent me a build that has 4 levels in it that are pretty much finished. But I think it's going to have like 10 or something in it. It doesn't take very long to get through each level, so it'll probably be one of those short games that everyone likes to diss because then you're finished and you never want to play it again. But I don't mind that because I play a lot of games, so it's nice to finish them sometimes.
Okay, so a quick contrast. I think this is Rich's game, I think, coming up. Let's have a quick look.
Yeah. Kept you waiting, huh?
Now.
So obviously this is Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. I'm a massive fan of Hideo Kojima. Not unreservedly. I was actually saying to someone last night on Twitter, like, I could write several articles in the failings in the Metal Gear Solid series, but I still think they're amazing. And I think the most amazing thing about them is, and this may not necessarily be obvious unless you kind of, unless you played all of them, is that even though they may look the same on the outside, they're all really, really different, and they all kind of choose a different thing to, think about and talk about, and they change up the mechanics in subtle ways. This is probably the biggest mechanical change the series has had, because we obviously saw Ground Zeroes last year, which was basically set in Guantanamo Bay. I mean, there was really very little attempt to disguise that. And it suggested a much more serious tone for the series, even though it still has, characters like Skullface. I'm sure there'll be a, cyborg ninja in there somewhere. I'm very excited about it. The main game, for those of you who don't know, is going to be set in Afghanistan in the 1980s. Kojima talks about it as an open world stealth game. As you can see, obviously, it looks absolutely amazing. Open world, I think, is traditionally, we tend to hear open world and our first thought is scale, big world. I don't necessarily think that's what it means with regards to Metal Gear 5. Certainly what Ground Zero suggested to me is that Kojima's interpretation of, and I shouldn't say Kojima, I should say Kojima Productions, their interpretation of open world seems much more to me about freedom of approach, just a lot of different ways to do things, a very, very rich, detailed, deep world that you can, just do all sorts of different things in. I can't wait, I honestly can't wait, because you only get a real Metal Gear every 4 or 5 years, and as the kids on forums say, day one for me. So, I'm not choosing this because I think I'm just excited about it. I just can't wait to play it. And, it's Koj. He's always interesting. He always comes up with, even Metal Gear 4 I actually think is the weakest in the series, and I didn't really like it very much. But I would say, a bad Kojima game, for me, is still better than the vast majority of other games. Just, that's it. So I can't wait to see what he's dreamed up.
Okay. Well, I think I wanted to open it up to questions, and then we'll come back to the other games afterwards, because I'm aware of time, and I want people to be able to ask questions. So I think we have some mics available.
I have a question. I was promised a bottle of wine.
If you'd have arrived on time, it's in the green room. Can we get the wine for Richard?
Yeah, come on. Where's my question?
Oh, there's a beer. That'll do.
Yes. RN Jesus says yes.
Oh, that,
yeah, sure. I'm Lucy. Hi. I was just wondering, how do you decide what to write about? Do you get approached by people, or do you just go with whatever you're interested in?
Okay.
My editors tell me what to do. I just do it. That's pretty much it.
Anyone else?
It's kind of a mix, really. I obviously have stuff I'm interested in. You stumble across stories occasionally. And lots of times, excuse me, an editor will just come to you and say, I want something on this. It's kind of like, it's one of those questions, isn't it? It's like when somebody asks a real writer, a novelist, kind of, where do your ideas come from? And it's like, I don't actually know. I just, most of the time you're just desperate for work. You're just kind of going, how on earth can I spin a story out of this? That Keith's a sucker, this will work.
So that's your commissioning career over.
Yeah.
It's like Arthur Miller once said, didn't he? Arthur Miller was in an interview once, and someone asked him, where do your ideas come from? And he said, I wish I knew, because I'd go there more often. Like the video games industry is an industry, and it creates its own news agenda. So every morning, I can't speak for everybody else, but every morning my email inbox will be full of press releases, and it's constant throughout the day. There's press releases. So the internet, the games industry creates a news agenda for you. And I think for a very, very long time, video game magazines and video game coverage often kind of mimicked the flow of information from publishers. So when I started out in games journalism, a lot of the magazines were essentially here's some news based on press releases often, here's a preview, and here's a review. And then you go away and you purchase that game if you want to, or you don't if you don't want to. And that's kind of how video game magazines work for a very, very long time. So the industry kind of generates stuff for you. There's always press release coming in telling you something. So a game's been announced, new DLC has been announced, that sort of thing. But a lot of my ideas these days don't come from that agenda at all. I think a lot of the beautiful and interesting and wonderful thing about video games is they are so heavily intersecting now with culture and our lives. And so you can take ideas from anywhere. You can read anything. I'm really interested in architecture. I don't know much about it, but I'm fascinated by it. And there's so many similarities between video games and architecture. Like architecture is always about creating spaces that have stories within them. And that's exactly what games are. And so listening, I love reading about architects and the way they think about space and building, because I think that tells me lots about how games work. So I'm really interested in that. And I'm interested in how people play games as well, what they do and how they interact with games. Like the most interesting stories to me are the stories that come out after a game is out. Like how do people interact with Minecraft? The amount of stories like that, that is a game that's full of stories. Human stories. And I know like I bored everyone to death with it, but my son's like completely obsessed with Minecraft, and I've learned a lot about him. He's autistic. I've learned a lot about him through Minecraft, and that to me, there's lots of stories like that. So video games have become such a part of our lives now that human stories result from it. I had a great story actually I ran last year about someone who was helped to come out as transgender through playing World of Warcraft. And that's like fascinating to me. So the games can kind of facilitate personal freedom and can help you with anxieties. So that's what I look for now. I try and look for human stories and human angles on the games that are out there and the games that people are experiencing, experimenting with and finding themselves through. I think that's always like a really valuable way, because we all want to hear human stories. Like journalism is always about humans. If there isn't a human at the center of your story, your story's not working. So yeah, that's where I look now, and those are the sort of stories I commission. And those are like, Simon, you've told lots of human stories. Some really interesting one for Eurogamer. Like you did that amazing story on the death in the the
Cafes?
PC Bang. Yeah, PC Bang cafes. And about what happened there. Someone playing online multiplayer games for 3 days solid, died, and what happened as a result. And I think, those sort of things are fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a kind of, if you want to try and be a career freelance writer, you have to try and look for those stories, particularly in an industry that's essentially in decline at the moment. It's harder and harder to, these spaces, there are fewer and fewer spaces. And like I was on a press trip last week, going to see a game, which like he says is how it traditionally is done, and there were maybe 30, journalists and video people on there. And, you just have an awareness that the messaging that's coming to you is the same for everyone. The publisher essentially wants everyone to write the same story, have the same bullet points. And basically they could swap any of us out for another meat writer and that would be fine. They'd do a perfectly good job and say, and that's no good for like a long-term freelance survival. You have to be a bit more actually, looking for stories, trying to mark yourself out and go, no, this is what I can bring. This is my perspective on games, what I find interesting. And I think, it's very difficult to find those stories within the traditional publisher system because, all of their employees, tend to sign NDAs, lifetime NDAs. So, if very often I'll try and speak to people who used to work at, a certain publisher or a developer, and they'll just say, I can't speak to you, I've signed a lifetime NDA. I could be taken to court if I talk about my experience on this game 6 years ago. And that means, actually telling true stories rather than, very kind of publisher-tailored ones, even in like making ofs of, in Edge or whatever, is actually very difficult. But I think you have to try and do that if you want to survive these days.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I think, we're reporting on an industry which is obsessively controlling, aren't we? I mean, I think that's the same. Like, I worked in a film magazine for a year, and it was the same there. Same in some ways. Like, the people you tend to meet in video games are really, really nice and friendly and interesting and intelligent. And really, often they are. If you can get the right people at the right times, they are forthcoming. The movie industry is very, very different. It's kind of sort of psychopathic in the way it deals with the press. At times, very controlling, very weird, very strange. But video games are kind of, they do have that. The publishers have that sense of control, but it's full of people that are really, really interesting, that have kind of interesting human stories, isn't it? And you've got to, one of the main challenges is to work out the way of getting past their media training. Like deprogramming people in a way, like video games industry. I think like any entertainment industry, everyone is media trained. Like they're told how to deal with media interviews. So if you go into an interview with a games publisher or a games developer, they will have like 2 or 3 points which they are going to make in that interview, whatever you do, whatever you ask them, just like politicians. Like when you see a politician on Newsnight, it's exactly the same thing. They have 3 points they're going to make and they will make your questions fit those points. And what you've got, the skill of it is trying to kind of deprogram that, I think, and try and catch people off guard to get the human story. So yeah, another question. Yes.
Hi, I'm Anthony. I think one of the joys of interacting with what you guys do is kind of connecting with the passion that you have for the stuff that you're writing about and the things that you really care about. And it can kind of change your mind about how I kind of feel about stuff as well as a reader. For example, when I first played Dark Souls, I thought, this is all right, the skeletons are a bit hard, but I don't really get what the joy of it is. What's the fun? And then I saw Mr. Stanton's fine YouTube series about it and saw the light. And so what game for you guys are you proudest of having evangelized? And is there any case where someone else's evangelizing of a game changed your mind about it?
Well, I find myself constantly evangelizing Euro Truck Simulator 2.
He was doing it like before they were going on stage.
I bought that based on you, thanks.
So can we should explain what, has everyone heard of Euro Truck Simulator 2? It is exactly what it sounds like. You are a European truck driver.
Yeah, driving around Europe.
And you've got to take on cargoes.
Yeah, and like a lot of simulator games, there's a lot of irony surrounding it. Like, oh, isn't that ridiculous? London Underground Simulator. But the thing about Euro Truck Simulator 2 is it's actually really good. Like, they built a really good game around a really boring concept, but there's something like weirdly kind of hypnotic about it. And I spent a lot of time on Twitter, and I've written articles about it. An article went up on Vice today actually about how I've never been more at peace than when I'm playing Euro Truck Simulator 2. And yeah, I know a lot of people have bought it because of that, and obviously not just me, a lot of other much more successful YouTubers have also evangelized it, but I like to think I played a part in its kind of occasional appearance in the Steam charts. But yeah, any excuse to write about it or talk about it, or play it.
Because you played it. He was telling us before he came on that he played it. You played it on Oculus Rift, didn't you?
Yeah.
Tell him what you did.
Well, I decided to do like an endurance thing where I thought I'm going to drive from Aberdeen to Stuttgart in like semi-real time, which takes like an hour or something. And I was playing it with the Rift on, and my brain was so filled into thinking I was really in the cabin of this like Scania truck that I went to lean on the window, and my arm fell through into nothing. And I thought that was the moment where I went, wow, Oculus Rift's pretty amazing. And I was going to put a cardboard box on my desk. So I was playing with the wheel.
Yeah.
But I never went that far.
Oh, I'm surprised. Anyone else? Games have evangelized?
Well, I suppose I evangelized Dark Souls a bit, but I think everyone else was doing it by that point. But I just adored Dark Souls. I just couldn't stop writing about it because I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I'd also, I played Dark Souls about a month before it came out because I was reviewing it. And so when everyone complains to me about, Dark Souls being difficult or hard to understand, I just, they've got no idea, because I played it when there was nothing on the internet about it, and I had no other option but to finish it because I had to review it. So, the first week of it was just, I wouldn't call it misery because I kind of enjoyed it, but it really was like just running into a wall again and again and again. And I think the really deep love and respect I have for that game comes because I really did have to figure it out myself, and I did. And I just don't think many other games do that now. Not many other games I've played in the last 10 years, I would say. I always say this about Dark Souls. I always say it really respects the player, and it really has faith in the fact that you are smart. It has faith in your ability to puzzle stuff out, and it feels to me like a lot of the other games I play handhold. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing per se. I'm just saying it seems to be the default mode for certainly big publisher games. I really find it very difficult to play an Assassin's Creed now, for example. There's just no satisfaction for me in those games. Like
they don't work anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I like looking at them. They're obviously quite pretty, but as a gamer. They just don't do anything for me anymore. And thank you for saying that, I got you into Dark Souls a little bit more, because it's great. And there was another aspect to that question, which was whether we'd got into something.
Because somebody else.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I'll have to think about that.
Anyone else on the games that you've loved that you've...
I was going to say, I don't really think anything. So I love it when other games writers get obsessed with a game. Like I don't feel like I have enough time, or maybe it's just that I've never come across a game that's grabbed me like that. But I love it when Pip talks about Dota and how long she's played it for, and like I am not interested in those kinds of games at all. But when Pip talks about it, it makes me want to go and buy it and get into it and like invest hundreds of hours of my life.
You don't have to buy it, it's free.
Oh yeah, exactly. So she's doing it already.
Dota pusher.
Me and Pip did a podcast together called the Not a Game podcast, and podcasts in particular are really good for me for listening to other writers or other people who speak about games go on and on about games that they love. And I guess my one would probably be The Sims, but the thing with that is that when I talk to other people about The Sims, they've usually played it already, so it normally just takes me mentioning it for them to go, oh yeah, I haven't played that in a while, I'm going to go play that. So I haven't really come across anything that I've kind of written about extensively that people have wanted to play, but I love it when it happens to other writers. It does make me the worry about it is it makes me feel like I'm interested in genres that I know I'm not. So like I don't know if this has happened to anyone else, but you'll read someone else's writing about a game that you know you won't like, but they are so good at writing about why they like it that it makes you want to go and buy it, and then you play it and you're like, this is not for me. But
Yeah, I saw loads of really good articles about Shadow of Mordor, and I thought I'm never going to like Shadow of Mordor because I don't really like Tolkien-esque fantasy RPGs that much. I thought I'm not going to get anything out of this game, and I played it, and it's kind of like it reminded me of living in Hemel Hempstead, in that you're in this nightmarish environment where violence is only ever a few meters away, and whenever it happens to you, you immediately have the sense that you have to get revenge, which was essentially my later teenage years. And so yeah, Shadows of Mordor I find fascinating now. I find it a fascinating game because it is essentially a game about creating revenge fantasies and then living them out. It's a game, and it's so unlike my normal everyday life. I mean, I'm not a violent person, but it brings out something in you. It just I love the fact with Shadows of Mordor that it's essentially a personal story. Like every other narrative game, it's always about your character, Nathan Drake, Lara Croft, whoever, has got a revenge that they've got to carry out, so you help them. It's never about what you think. I don't care about the baddies in Uncharted. I don't care what the backstory is, but I really care about the people in Shadow of Mordor, the orcs that slayed me because I wasn't looking in the right direction when they attacked me. I care about that and I want to get them back. And lots of people wrote about that, and that's what really got me into it. The idea of personal retribution, I think, is fascinating. So,
I'd say that okay, fine, Jordan is accusing me of evangelizing Dota 2. I'd say I evangelize esports because I think it's fascinating. I think it does that thing of just bringing all those human stories as well that you were talking about earlier. I think I tend not to sort of cry over video games, sort of single-player experiences, things like that. But the amount of times I have burst into tears over the end of a match in an esports tournament is embarrassingly high. But it's because you get swept up in that sort of the electric atmosphere. Going to a live esports event is amazing, especially if it's within a sort of like an auditorium setting rather than a massive stadium. I find those are too big, but the sort of that sort of perfect, maybe 3,000 seater thing is fantastic. It's properly moving and exciting and awesome when they get it right. And on the sort of point of what have I been evangelized at, it is that Euro Truck Simulator 2 stuff. But, Andy, do you have a driving license?
No.
Right, because the problem is I can't play it because I'm having a great time and then I go to look in my side mirrors and they're not there. And the thing is, I'm now trapped because I'm like, do I just basically build a lorry in my bedroom? Because that is what I need. But then Oculus Rift, you see, but then that's not it.
Yeah, and the mirrors are fully simulated, so you can actually look in them. So
live evangelism.
It's doing it right now as we sit here.
I'm basically going to get an Oculus Rift just so I can play Euro Truck Simulator 2.
Next time you're in Bath, come to the office and I'll put it on your head and you'll
show you my rig.
You'll go and visit him in the office and he'll open the door and it's like horror, it's like baseball cap, sun sticking out the back of his pocket, sweaty t-shirt. So I'm horribly characterising truck drivers.
Because Andy was constantly evangelising it, and I played it with a mate of mine who's Welsh, and all he wanted to do was go to Cardiff. He's, from Cardiff. He was like, "Come on, mate, we'll go there. We'll stick Cardiff FM on." And that's what we did. We just drove around this bit of Cardiff that he knew really well, and he was like, "Look at that, just like real life." And he'd be like,
because you can listen to radio stations.
Yeah, that's the magic
the
touch,
country you're in, live
Yeah.
radio. So if you're in Belgium, you can listen to Belgian radio.
I think I tweeted you to just say, can I go around my hometown somehow? And you were just like, well, there's a route that goes from Dover to London, so it would kind of go near Canterbury. I'm like, yeah, all right, fine, bored.
Anyway, any other questions? Yes, here we are.
Hi, I'm Sean. As a man from Hemel Hempstead.
Back again, Sean.
Back again.
Public relations design.
Don't worry, they hate everybody as much as we hate everybody else as well. It's all good. Do you think that the UK as an environment, I know the next Assassin's Creed game is supposedly going to be set in London, but do you think the UK as an environment is drastically overlooked creatively in video games? I know the last one I can think of, other than a tube simulator or a train simulator or Euro Truck Simulator, was probably the Getaway 2, whatever it was.
It's not going to be for long because of the tax breaks.
Yeah.
If things are set in Great Britain, you get tax breaks.
Yeah, has everyone heard about this? Yeah, so video games like the film industry are going to get tax breaks. But they're cultural tax breaks, aren't they? So you have to. There's like a checklist that the video game developers in the UK will have to fill out in order to get tax breaks on the games that come out, and part of it is cultural relevance. So like it seems to me like, is there like a checklist and says,
Yeah.
right, have you got these things in your game?
Yeah.
A phone box, a red pillar
Is it
box,
Doctor Who?
the Queen. But yeah, that might change things. But yeah, it's always surprised me. But I think, you know, as we've said a lot of times, like the mainstream video games industry is so predilected on money, and it's so either US or Japanese centric. One of the biggest selling games in the world, Grand Theft Auto, is written in Edinburgh, was invented in Dundee. But yeah, it's obviously set in fictionalized American cities, apart from the two GTA London add-ons from the late 90s. But yeah, I do think
Wasn't that just a grid system thing, though? Like it was easier to.
What?
Like, because
You
the
think-
cities
American
were
cities are
arranged-
square.
No, it's not. No, it's the Americans aren't going to play games that are in
No, but I
Hempstead.
mean-
But also, there's the thing about you were saying about No Man's Sky having colour. Like,
Yeah.
if you set a game in England, it's just going to be grey.
We've got lots of countryside.
A game that does actually make use of Britain as a setting is Sherlock Holmes Crimes and Punishments, which was released recently. And that is actually a genuinely brilliant game. And there's like a level set in like Bridlington train station or like Yorkshire. And that makes good use of like provincial English settings. And I think there was a bit of a Broken Sword set in like Glastonbury Tor.
Yeah.
There's also
So there's a few.
Oh yeah, that is Broken Sword has used a lot of
Yeah.
Britain.
Say You're Being Hunted as well, like has a lot of sort of it reminds me a lot of where I grew up in the sort of marshy kind of flat land areas around there. Like it was really interesting sort of just wandering around the demo of that actually. I haven't played it since it's come out. Don't tell Jim. But
It's a really good like aesthetic though, that bleak sort of grey-skied British setting, you know, for horror, you know, for like a horror or survival game or something.
If you think about that, some of the best horror films of the last 40 years have been set in Britain. Like, I mean, imagine a Wicker Man video game
Like
or
Straw Dogs
Straw
or
Dogs
something,
video. Yeah, Straw Dogs game would be amazing. Yeah, because we have like amazing, weird rural areas full of cider swilling maniacs. Who wouldn't like forget zombies? Cider swilling yokels it's got to be the next big thing. I live in Somerset now. Anyone else on?
There's an indie game being developed in Brighton that I can't remember the name of that is set in Britain in like the 80s, the 70s or 80s, I think, in the countryside. Lee Alexander wrote about it. She interviewed the developers. I cannot remember the name of it. That's the one. Everybody's Gone to the Rapture.
Yes, yeah,
So
by
that's it.
Chinese Room, the
Yeah.
creators of Dear Esther, they're also used
Scotland,
quite.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, they used, you know, Dear Esther was obviously a sort of grim Hebridean
Yeah,
island,
Scotland,
which
yeah.
was really evocative as a result, like more so than any kind of generic American type climate.
Yeah. So yeah, it does happen, but I think it should happen more. But I think it is just marketing. I feel that has got a lot to do with it. The fact that it's easier to tell your massive American audience that this game, that Los Santos is Los Angeles rather than London. I think that's part of it. But yeah, and we have like a rich heritage. Like I'm so bored of like Tolkien-esque mythology, and we have so many. Like we are one country in Europe that has amazing, rich mythological background. You know, so many stories, cultural stories, ancestral stories to tell, and like it never gets told because everything's got orcs and pixies in it.
I was going to say, if you want a modern game as well that has either like loads of guns or cars driving really, really fast, it has to be set in a big American city because you're allowed guns in America, whereas you're not here, so it wouldn't be quite.
Do you think that's why they had GTA in London? We can't have in Britain. You're not allowed guns. But
the cars thing as well. If you want a game where you're racing really fast around a big city, you've got to have those huge roads that they have over there in America, not the tiny little country lanes.
I've
that
seen
we've got
Guy
here.
Ritchie films though. Everyone in London's got a gun.
Yeah.
Sawn off.
You mean a shooter?
Yeah.
Surely. Okay. Any more questions? Yes, there's a hand. Yes, there. Over here.
Hey, my name is Prince. I actually work in visual effects, but I love creating videos on games and stuff like that. And so I did a video a couple years ago on E3, and recently I went to Japan to shoot a video on the localization company 84. And you guys posted a video last year on esports, on like a big esports group, I think, and they play StarCraft and stuff, and it was really, really good. And you don't really see a lot of videos produced like that on the games industry. I can think of something called Digging in the Carts, which was on video game music, and Human Angle on Polygon. They have a really good series. Do you think that there's like a space for videos of that quality within the industry? Because usually it's either Twitch streams or comedy videos on YouTube and stuff like that. You don't really see anything of like a cinematic quality or that has, you know, depth on on the human side of things? Do you think there's a space for that?
I definitely think there is. And I know, I mean, you probably don't need me to tell you why it is that most videos that you see on video game sites are Twitch and are YouTube. It's because it's really cheap and easy to produce. All you need for a Twitch video is one person, two people in a room playing a video game, and then you're streaming it, and you have a massive audience. Like Twitch has got an audience now of 55 million people. And if you can reach 55 million people by sitting in front of a video game and talking, then, and you'll get the advertising revenue from that if you're a partner, then that is it's such a seductive proposition compared to something like, we did a video we went over to the Call of Duty World Championships in the States, and I went over there and we had to take a cameraman and lots of equipment, and it's so hard and so time consuming. And we made a beautiful video and lots of people watched it. It did really well, but nowhere near as well as if it was a popular YouTuber playing a video game. So, you've got this kind of economic thing. But I think maybe things will change. I think, I think there is now an audience for high quality, really interesting cinematic or just kind of documentary style stuff. It's just working out, like in a news organisation, how you do it and how you budget for it. Like one of the best things I think we did last year, we went to see the makers of Grand Theft Auto, the original Grand Theft Auto. And actually, that wasn't that expensive. We just went to Dundee. I found them all, tracked them down, and we did a little because some of them aren't in this industry anymore, and lots of them, as Simon said, lots of people have signed NDAs. Rockstar's one of those companies where they're a little bit controlling, so I had to find people that weren't really in the industry anymore, and we just went and did kind of Vox Pops interviews with them, and it worked really nicely, and it was so beautifully shot. I think there's going to be an enlarging audience for it, but it's just getting beyond the thing of, well, we could do that, or we could sit and play League of Legends on Twitch for 3 hours and make loads of money and not actually for it to cost anything. So
one of my favourite things about YouTube is once you surpass 10,000 subscribers, you're allowed to use YouTube's Centerpoint offices where they have studios, so you can go there and use their better cameras and stuff like that. And they have numerous sets there. I don't know, some of you might be streamers and know all this, but they have numerous sets there, and a number of them are teenagers' bedrooms. So the idea is that even in this like professionally kind of, you go there to get a high production video, but still the aesthetic is that of the kind of, onanistic teen. I wonder if that will maybe kind of move on a little bit. Maybe, Keith's absolutely right. The economics of the thing mean someone sitting in their house kind of talking about their passion is kind of one of the cheapest and easiest ways. But I think the scope for high production in that, I know the New Yorker ran a really decent video with Sacha Frere-Jones, who's their head music critic, and he was just like in his flat in Brooklyn talking about his favourite music of last year, and it was beautifully shot, and it showed off some of the nice objects in his house, and he was able to just talk about how he listens to music and stuff like that, and that was great. I'd love to see some of that stuff in video games. I wonder, there's obviously room for more stuff, but it's just trying to find ways they're economically viable.
Yeah, I think YouTube's maybe one of the ways. It's like giving a camera to a creative and saying, just film your life for a couple of days, and I think that's the way. Using the medium that is acceptable and cheap, and telling stories in new ways. I think we've got to find a way of doing that. I think.
I'm mostly sort of seeing it from the game developer side, especially in terms of esports, because they're using that to promote the game. Like Valve had Free to Play, their movie, which focused on a bunch of different players and their journeys through particular tournaments and things. But also League of Legends, Riot produced that for the League of Legends pro scene, and Smite had some at the recent World Championships. They had sort of just short sections where players would like talk about what was going on in their lives and like what this thing meant to them, that kind of stuff. And obviously you take into account that it's very much them promoting their game. It's not going to sort of paint it in a bad light or anything, but those do sort of provide some interesting examples, and from the feedback that it gets, you can kind of gauge the level of interest as well. But yeah, it's a matter of the economics, but also the expertise, because quite a lot of sites don't have necessarily a dedicated video person or particularly high-tech equipment or access to that stuff. So yeah, it's a combination of all those factors, I'd say.
Yeah. Are we okay to have one more question? Yeah, okay, one more question. Yes, over there.
What do you think about cosplayer and this kind of event around the world of video game?
Cosplay. And yes, I mean, that's part of the the sort of consumer culture of video games, which is really fascinating. Like video game fandom, like one of the greatest things about video games is although it is very highly controlled by publishers and developers who have a very strict idea of what they want to do to promote their stuff, video game players, I think, are unlike any other audience in that they are so massively involved. They are so massively engrossed and kind of embedded in the games they play. I mean, I think that's one of the wonderful things about it. There's like a sort of ownership, isn't there? Cosplay is an expression of the fact that you have put your life into this game. You've played, like, I don't know, Skyrim for 100 hours. Like, you don't watch films for 2 hours, and films can change your life. But I think games can sort of almost become your life for a while. And you have an ownership over it that is beyond what the publisher could have intended for you. Like, I've played games that I found totally, I don't know, subsume me. I remember playing Elite, the first time I played Elite when I was very, very young. But I set up my games room to look like a spaceship, and I was totally just like your truck, but slightly more glamorous and imaginative. But I set up my room for it, and I was totally engaged. It was my fiction, and I was there, and I was that commander, and I was in that ship, and it was me that chose to put Blue Danube on the music as I was docking. But games do that. And I think cosplay is like really, really part of that, taking on the identity of a games character. And obviously cosplay happens in other areas. It happens in film area and comics as well. But I think there's that sense of ownership over video game characters. Like our relationship with games characters are unlike any other relationship we have. No matter how good a book is that you've read, no matter how good a film is you've read, that is still someone else's story. And you can relate to it, but it's never yours. But I think video games give you that sense that is yours and you own it and you can be that. I think that, cosplay, I think for me is the most wonderful physical representation of video game fandom.
I got jumped by a Japanese guy once for taking a picture of a cosplayer when I was, he was furious. I was at the Tokyo Game Show in, I think, 2009, around that period. And I was there for Edge. And I just had a camera with me, so I was just taking some colour shots as I was going through. And there was this group of cosplayers, and obviously I thought, great shot, I'll take it. And I just walked up, took a shot. There were loads of other people doing it, and walked away. And this short guy ran after me, and he was shouting something, but I obviously don't speak Japanese. Well, not obviously, but I don't. And he grabbed me from behind and tried to grab my camera. And initially I thought he was mugging me, but he wasn't. It turned out he was the manager of one of these cosplayers. A cosplayer with a manager. Can you believe that? And I hadn't asked permission to take a photograph, even though she was just among the group of general people. And he was fuming, insisted I deleted the photo. I tried to kind of explain to him, why are you bothered about this? But he was, he obviously thought I was going to make millions off it or something. Yeah. So that's my, physical experience with cosplay. Yeah.
Being mugged by someone.
I'm just kind of impressed by the effort they put into their costumes. When you see the kind of detail in the embroidery, and it's far beyond something I would ever do. But you've got to respect it. It's like
I'd love to see you cosplay as Snake. Could I commission you to do that?
If you buy me an expensive enough cigar, the world can be yours.
Okay. Anyone else thoughts on cosplay?
I think it's great. There's a couple of problems around it, like this idea that women, especially who do cosplay and dress up as characters, are doing it for attention and not because they actually like the games themselves. And that seems to be a huge problem in cosplay culture, like people getting judged for that kind of thing. And also the way that the games media covers it, like a lot of us don't talk about cosplay at all, but the sites that do, they seem to just put galleries up, which kind of frames it in a different kind of, these are people to be looked at, not people who's, you want to go and interview them and ask them about making of their costume and stuff. And I think we should be doing more of that kind of thing, talking about, how they go about making their costumes and what made them interested in the game, instead of just being like, here are a load of pictures of particularly women, even though there are male cosplayers, just dressed in these outfits for you to look at.
Yeah.
Something that I do at events like that is it's interesting to sort of watch who asks for permission to take photos and who asks for sort of permission to, you know, like bring someone in for a really close hug and things like that. Like some people are quite respectful of other people's space and other people kind of assume that kind of almost that the person is a prop to be like, you know, sort of to sort of augment your photo and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting just sort of watching that almost that like body language exchange. And also sometimes when you're at events and you'll be walking behind somebody just chatting, sometimes you do hear a lot of like just derogatory remarks and stuff like that, and that can be quite off-putting or make the space suddenly seem quite unwelcoming. So there are those kind of aspects of it. But when you're talking to the people who make the costumes and who sort of do cosplay at these events, like they're super engaged, they love what they do, they look fantastic. And like these costumes like take days and days and days to put together. And so, you know, there's just, like Jordan was saying, like it's fascinating actually talking to these people and just like finding out, you know, how did you do that with your shoes, you know, or like, you know, how do you have wings like that? And the actual sort of the physics of stuff, because often the costumes don't actually, shush now, what I mean by that is the costumes as they are designed for computer games don't necessarily have to take into account how something would work as a real costume. Yes, but like, you know, even if it's just a massive but like, you know, a massive piece of armor or something, but like it can really drag you down, or it could like be a belt that absolutely just won't work in real life. So you have to actually do a lot of like taking weird game physics into account for actually constructing a real version of a thing. I can't remember who I was speaking to about that recently, but I was, and that was just super interesting.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, I think we've got to, we're over time, unfortunately. I didn't get to show everybody's games. Like we had 4 more games to show, but we didn't get time because it's just the way this happens. I just want to say thank you so much for coming. We've not done one of these events before. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've got something out of it. It's been really great to see you all here. Downstairs in King's Place, there is a bar called Rotunda, and we have a space kind of set aside for us. We're going to, well, I'm hoping these guys are going down. I'm certainly going down there. You're all welcome to come down. We can have some drinks and continue the discussion. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming, and thank you for asking questions. Anyone that did ask questions, come to the front when we're finished, and you can have a T-shirt, a book, and one of Jordan's delightful, delicious
quite a lot of
biscuits.
questions that didn't get asked. I mean, don't be shy. Come up. And
Come up. Like, you know, we're going to go straight downstairs.
Not too close.
We'll go straight downstairs. Yeah, come up and ask us questions. I'd also like to thank all my panelists: Andy, Philippa, Simon, Rich, and Jordan, Erica, Weber. And thank you all for coming. Good night. See you downstairs.